ワンピースは実在する。
俺はモンキー・D・ルフィ。お前らを超えて海賊王になる男だ。
人の夢は終わらねえ。
Welcome
to Nerdville.
You'll never find the more wretched hive of scum and villainy. We must be cautious.
Hello there everyone, I'm Fanfi.
I'm Turtle. This chapter seems to be the conclusion of Kuma's backstory. It's not only one of the saddest backstories, but connects the dots between a lot of events that have unfolded in the story of One Piece. We also get a deeper dive into the relationship that Kizaru has with Kuma, Vegapunk, Bonnie, and Sentomaru that developed while preparing for the procedures.
Cool cover page this week. The description says it all, where Sanji is cooking for Usopp, which makes him nostalgic about the Usopp pirates, for some reason. I don't really know why. If any of you do, let us know in the comments. What is quite interesting is that the cover was requested by Noda Skywalker. This is humorous, since as we said in our previous review, Kuma's backstory does look a lot like Darth Vader's.
We're back at Egghead Island in the past, where Kizaru finally makes his appearance, looking swagalicious as ever wearing that fedora. He states that he is here on official business, and giving us confirmation that Vegapunk's previous lab that was mentioned in the last chapter was in fact Punk Hazard. Have you noticed that it's been 3 chapters already where Oda has been presenting new characters to the backstory in exactly the same way, taking half the page over the panel sitting on a box. We saw it with Kuma when he was healing the old folk and when Genie was presented as being the leader of the Revolutionary Army Eastern Forces. It's interesting how Oda is using the same presentation for these pages. Vegapunk answers that this place is overflowing his head with ideas. Kizaru responds, stating that it's why he probably missed it, and that the government frowns upon deals made with pirates behind their backs. As we see a transponder spy Snail observing them from above, Vegapunk conveys his disappointment that he's only doing his job, as we see that the Marines have surrounded the island as a precaution. This is another instance of Vegapunk being very naive, where it really seems odd that he didn't do a thorough sweep of the place, especially if he's going to work on things that he wanted to keep from the world government. It's not surprising that they found evidence quite quickly on Vegapunk's researching the Void Century. Someone jumps on the transponder Snail by explaining that Kuma is a pirate with a 296 million bounty on his head, and that it's irrelevant whether Vegapunk considers him a perfect candidate. He continues by stating that having his face represent the Navy would be dangerous for their reputation, adding that they have 3 stipulations for his deal to be honored.
1. Kuma must become a warlord, since they have lost a member because of a rookie named Ace. 2. That he must undergo procedures to become a weapon for the world government. Kuma asks if they are going to modify his body. They answer that he is already strong enough to be a warlord, but with the modifications on top, he will be feared by all pirates. Kizaru adds that this help would be invaluable, as Vegapunk tells him to can it. The person continues by saying that they are aware of Kuma's past as a revolutionary and need to ensure that he will not betray the world government. As the third point is revealed, the person on the other line is obviously the godhead of science and defense, J. Garcia Saturn, ominously stating that Kuma must abandon his free will. Vegapunk, outraged, informs Saturn that it would be the same as killing him, and exclaims that he is doing this since the other warlords refuse to follow orders, and asks if Saturn expects him to murder another human being. It seems like this is definitely not the only reason for Saturn saying this, especially with the look he is giving the audience. It seems more personal than anything else. As we already stated, it would not be surprising that Garcia knew that Kuma was the buccaneer slave that defied him many years ago on God Valley, and that having a buccaneer slave with no mind of his own, no free will to defy the world government or worship Nika while subjugating the population is the ultimate punishment for his race. The demon Asmodeus puts Vegapunk back in his place, reaffirming that he is a military scientist and must obey orders, adding that these conditions must be met for Bonnie to be cured, otherwise the procedure would probably be impossible to accomplish. Stella continues his outrage as Kuma accepts their offer, and that he was worried of not being able to save Bonnie, but now he is willing to accept any cost to save his daughter's life. He is crying and smiling at the same time, as everyone in the room is baffled by Kuma's kind heart.
This scene is quite awful, since Kuma has so many emotions running through him right now. Acceptance out of love for protecting his daughter, sorrow because he's losing what makes him a person, as he tries to keep a straight face. This is making everyone in the room emotional. Even Kizaru has a hard time keeping his composure. This is understandable, since such a kind person, getting their free will removed from them is quite hard to swallow. As this is happening, Bonnie is cheerfully running around Egghead with Sentomaru chasing her. Saturn asks Vegapunk how long the modification and the cure will take. He states that Bonnie's Sapphire scale will take 6 months and a year of recovery, and Kuma's modifications will take 2 years. Kumachi is relieved. Since she will be cured before the age of 10, Saturn chimes in asking how they can trust him, since Bonnie will be cured before the end of Kuma's procedure. He adds that the world government will take custody after she's cured, and only will be freed once he has erased his personality. Vegapunk is even more furious than before, since Kuma wouldn't get to see his daughter after she's cured. Saturn affirms this, and that Kuma will be very busy with his duties as a warlord. Also, any contact between them will be forbidden, so they don't escape. If there's any hint of defiance, Bonnie will spend the rest of her life as a slave. This obviously guarantees Kuma's compliance, and this is precisely what he wanted to avoid, and the main reason he himself never got together with Genie. He explains that he will never try to see her, but that he has one request: to not tell Bonnie about her illness or that she is a hostage. He also doesn't want her to stay at a government facility, but in the Sorbet Kingdom. If they can grant this one request, he will obey without question. Garcia agrees to the terms, stating that it doesn't matter where she's kept as long as the world government oversees it. Kuma informs Bonnie that they will both be staying here for the next 6 months. Bonnie is understandably very excited about this, since they have been apart for so long. She informs Kuma that this weirdo next to her is Sentomaru.
Meanwhile, Vegapunk is filled with inspiration, as he thinks to himself that having people who could do time-consuming tasks for him, such as eating and going to the toilet, would be so helpful. This is obviously in reference to the 7 paths of Punk, if you know what I mean, as he wishes there were 5 more of him. We see a scene of Kuma undergoing his cyborgification, while Bonnie is undergoing surgery. As we stated in our intro, as well as in the previous review, Kuma's backstory has quite a few similarities with Anakin Skywalker. This is even further reinforced with Kuma laying on the table, with the next panel showing Bonnie in a similar situation. This is reminiscent of the scene of Anakin becoming Darth Vader and Padme giving birth. The following panels are all without dialogue. We see Bonnie playing with Sentomaru again, her drawing her dad, and also a really fun panel of them sleeping, where Bonnie is using Kuma as her mattress. This also reminds us that she used to sleep in a cage, so Kuma wouldn't squish her. More cargo comes in to continue the construction of Egghead, as we see Kuma and Bonnie helping them out. Bonnie spots something delicious. It's a giant-ass pizza. We see Kizaru, Kuma, Bonnie, Sentomaru, and Vegapunk all enjoying the feast, even leading to some dancing. Wait a minute. Are they dancing to the beat of the Nika drums? This is interesting since Vegapunk and Kizaru don't realize what this means. In addition, this panel not only shows us the group dancing, but it looks like the entire island is joining in, which is again very reminiscent of the banquet scene at Skypiea. Kizaru, Kuma, Bonnie, Sentomaru, and Vegapunk seem to have formed a very strong bond during these times, which explains why Kizaru was hesitating to kill Vegapunk when the time came. The same with Bonnie when he told her he didn't want to injure any more of his friends. It is understandable as to why Kizaru failed this mission, showing again the incompetence of the Gorosei in understanding human emotions.
A time-lapse occurs. We are half a year later, and Vegapunk announces that Bonnie's results are good, and after a year of rehabilitation, she will be able to enjoy natural light and she'll be completely cured. As the pair thank him, Bonnie asks that she will come and visit once she's all better. Pair comes back to Sorbet Kingdom, with Bonnie so happy to be back. A person enters the church. It's Granny Connie! The former queen tells Kuma that she's more than happy to take care of Bonnie. Kuma thanks her, saying that a notorious pirate sticking around wouldn't be good. He lifts up Bonnie, telling her he wouldn't be back for at least a year, but he will write to her a ton of letters. She responds that when he's back, that they will sail to all the places that they talked about. Kuma, with a gentle smile, says, "I'd love to take you." Kuma must be crushed, knowing that we'll never be able to do this for her. Suddenly, 2 doctors and a nurse enter the church, telling Kuma to leave it to them. Saturn is following through on what he said, and we can see that he isn't messing around, sending a Cypherpole agent to supervise Bonnie. But also I wonder if that's why Bonnie is so strong, since she could have been trained by Alpha for that year. Bonnie seems to be quite the beast for a 12-year-old girl, since she is part of the worst generation, actively fighting against all sorts of individuals. We even saw her fight Bullet, albeit briefly, during One Piece Stampede. We saw in the last chapter that she did seem to be a competent fighter, even overpowering adult, but the fact that she's 12 years old and doing all of this is kind of putting things back into perspective. She is clearly much stronger than we thought, being able to compete with characters that have maybe about 10 years on her, which is really impressive.
Alpha walks towards Kuma saying that they were sent to monitor Bonnie's health, announcing new rules where suspicious individuals will not be allowed in the church during the recovery, and that you need to bring ID to visit. Someone yells that it's such a pain. and asks what they are building around the church. She answers that it's their living quarters, when it's clearly also a watch post and a fence around the church. They are obviously trying to control Bonnie's environment to keep Kuma true to his word. She is holding a cube and whispers to Kuma, "Don't forget, a child's life is such a fragile thing." She then breaks the cube. Kuma says he understands and will not return. He says his goodbyes to Bonnie, telling her, "Thank you. I'm so glad you were born." She is so happy he says that, but doesn't understand that this is the last time she will ever see him. Everyone says their farewells as Kuma is leaving the church. The narrator takes over, announcing that the pirate world is about to be shocked. Kuma is now a warlord of the sea. We get to see the reaction of major players in the story about this revelation. First, Doffy is excited to add a player to his game. Then we see Crocodile and Robin. He is intrigued about the news, but Crocodile is more focused on his operation. Then Mihawk has nothing to say. As per usual, he hides his emotion, and has probably destroyed a ship in the background, aka he's been Mihawking. The next panel is nice, since we see Alvida and Kobe, with her as per usual seeking validation, asking if she is stronger than Kuma. We continue with Ace, Marco, Whitebeard, Teach, and Jinbei. Ace tells Jinbei that it's great news that they have found a replacement. Jinbei answers that he shouldn't be talking about that, and that the piracy landscape is changing because a king became a member of the Warlord. We see Boa, who says she doesn't care since he's a man. Moria reads the paper saying that the pop-off fruit doesn't sound that frightening, which is hilarious since he got destroyed by only pacifistas. We end this revelation with the Revolutionary Army. First we see Dragon, probably saying to himself, "Ah, so this is the deal you've made." As for Sabo and the others, they are confused, since Kuma would never answer to the world government. We cut back to Komachi on his ship, writing to Bonnie about his journey. We love Kuma's flag, by the way, since it's the drawing we saw that Bonnie made him on Egghead Island. He continues writing, telling her he is trying to find places for them to visit. He sent the letters via Seagull. Randomly, we see a panel of Luffy being chased by a tiger. He is laughing about making the tiger mad. The final panel ties all of this together. As Kuma receives a call about his next assignment, it looks like he was about to arrive in Luffy's hometown.
This feels like the end of Kuma's backstory, since we arrived where the story began.
Turtles believes that maybe the story might continue to the point where Kuma sees Luffy and realizes that he is Nika, explaining why Kuma disobeyed the Gorosei. But that sounds kind of far-fetched, don't you think?
Well, to answer Fanfi's obvious skepticism, I do remind him that he did help the Straw Hats on Thriller Bark disobeying the Gorosei and protecting the Sunny for all that time. But the more likely outcome is that Oda is teasing us with the idea that Kuma is so close to the current Joy Boy. As we said previously, this is the beginning of the story. The fact that we see Luffy, Kobe, and Alvida really tells us that this is the start. This is the perfect moment to end Kuma's backstory, since it's tying in with the beginning of the story, and almost all of our questions are answered. Apart from maybe why Kuma is malfunctioning currently and attacking Marie-Joie, and why did he have programming in place to protect the Straw Hat specifically, it seems clear that Kuma is not completely erased, since we saw his humanity in Thriller Bark and Sabaody. Seeing how furious Vegapunk was, he must have found a way to bypass some of the reprogramming. Another possible extension of his backstory would be following Bonnie's side of things, since we don't know what happened to her from the time in Sorbet to Zoro meeting her at Sabaody. This is our review of chapter 1100 of One Piece. Hope you enjoyed. Do you believe that this is the end of Kuma's backstory? If not, what do you think is still missing about Kuma's life that hasn't been covered? Let us know in the comments below. Positive or negative, we need the engagement.
If you haven't checked out our previous review about how Kuma and Anakin Skywalker's backstories from Star Wars are similar, then click on the video at the end. Speaking of Star Wars,
If you want to learn a little bit about the Old Republic era in Star Wars,
how about you check out our playlist on our duo playthrough of Star Wars The Old Republic?
a very cool story.
Embrace the dark side. Do it. Click on the next video.
See you next time.
Peace out.